Mr. Dave Zangaro. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. I want you to be able to have the final word, at least for now, on Brandon Graham's retirement to start us off, because obviously you've been covering the team. He's been there 15 years. I know he's still going to be around, but no longer a player. Do you have a top memory that kind of jumps out in your time covering Brandon Graham now that he'll no longer be an active player?
Man, yeah, there's a lot of them. He's a special guy, special player for this team. Right after the Super Bowl, when we were in New Orleans, I was walking off the field, and I wrote about this week, but he sees me and immediately starts talking trash because that's the way he's wired. But he's just always got the juice, and I think that's the thing that will stand out most. He was a really good player for a long time, was a really good leader, but every single day he brought the energy, brought the juice. He trash-talked everyone who was around him, whether that was teammate, opponent, reporter, it didn't matter. Just a special guy. And, to have that moment with him after the Super Bowl was really, really cool. And I think everyone's going to miss him. He's a true Eagle. He's going to one day be in the Eagles Hall of Fame. And he wasn't to the level of player that maybe a Fletcher Cox or a Jason Kelce or even Elaine Johnson has been. But, what he meant to this team for over a decade is really special.
Dave, I want to talk about your story about Zack Baun. Obviously, that was the big Eagles free agent signing thus far. But do you feel that there's another level that he can hit?
Yeah, it's tricky because, is he ever going to put up the stats he put up in 2024? It's hard to expect that, right? He had 150 tackles, 5 forced fumbles, 3.5 sacks, all that stuff. It's going to be really tough to duplicate that type of season, All-Pro, Pro Bowl, Defensive Player of the Year finalist. So I think that's far-fetched, but in terms of understanding his role in the defense, understanding what Vic Fangio's defense is trying to do on each and every snap, playing multiple positions in the defense, which he kind of got to do at the end of the season when he got the green dot. I think there is some growth there still accessible for Zack Baun, and he kind of chuckled at the question, but he agrees too. He thinks there is a lot more room for growth. Now, I don't know if that'll mean a better season statistically than he had in 24. That's hard to fathom, but I think that any player going into year 2, year 3, year 4 of an offensive scheme or a defensive scheme, there are layers to it, and you get to learn more and more of it. And I think he's just scratched the surface of this defense in terms of what Vic Fangio wants to do. So, I do think in that respect, there's definitely some room for growth.
And obviously, Baun was a guy where they kind of took a flyer last season on, and it worked out tremendously well. But the trade-off was they had to pay him a lot of money, which means so far in this offseason, how he's had to kind of be pretty judicial about how he spent his money. 1 month or so from the draft, what do you think this team still needs as far as to repeat as Super Bowl champions based on how he's done so far?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think edge rusher, even though they have Ojulari, is still a really important position when you're talking about the draft because you're not just drafting for this year. You're trying to figure it out long term. I think they're in a decent spot there. They have Nolan Smith. They have Jalix Hunt, who are going to be here for a while, but we don't really know about Ojulari or Josh Uche. Certainly we don't really know about Bryce Huff either. So that's a position that I think is one that you have to circle. I think tight end on offense is one. We kind of don't know what the Dallas Goedert situation is, whether or not he's going to be here. Offensive line, it's not a glaring weakness right now, but you lose Mekhi Becton, you lose Fred Johnson, you have to replenish there. And then the other one on defense for me is safety. Right now, Sidney Brown is penciled in as the other starter. I think safety is a spot where they could look early in the draft. And then, Justin Simmons is still out there. And as long as he's out there, I think he's going to be linked to the Eagles. And I could see him being like a Mekhi Becton type of signing after the draft. If they don't take a safety in the first or second round, you say, okay, bring him in. He's a veteran. And after the draft, he doesn't count toward the compensatory pick formula. So you don't have to worry about him screwing that up. So I think that there are multiple positions where the Eagles still need to improve, and they have the draft to do that. They have the second and third waves of free agency. But ultimately, I do think they're in a pretty good spot with where their roster is comparative to other teams in the division and in the conference.
Dave, you mentioned him a moment ago, so I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. In your opinion, what do you think the future holds for Dallas Goedert?
It's a tricky one. I think it will behoove both sides to figure this out for this year and run it back. And because this is a team that can compete for a Super Bowl right now again, and I think they're much better with him than without him. I understand his perspective. There's no guaranteed money left, and he wants to cash in on his career while he can. And I understand the Eagles' perspective, where this is a guy who hasn't been able to stay on the field for a lot of his career, and that diminishes his value. But I'm going to buck the trend here a little bit. I think most people are expecting him to be gone. I just look at this, and I think that it helps both sides if they figure this out for at least one more season and make it work. So, and this is not me basing it on any information, but I just think it makes a lot of sense to figure it out in 2025 and run it back.
We're speaking with Dave Zangaro. He does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for NBC Sports Philadelphia. Working off of that, the offense, it seems like they're kind of, especially if they were to get the Goedert thing worked out somehow, this offense seems like it's ready-made to be pretty explosive once again. Is there anything you mentioned other than right guard? Is there any place else where you think they could possibly be lacking on that side of the ball, assuming they get Goedert and right guard figured out?
Well, they need a swing tackle. Fred Johnson signed a free agent deal, so they don't really have that swing tackle right now, and that's an important spot. Fred started 5 games for them in 2024, one at right guard one at right tackle and 4 at left tackle. So they need to figure that out. I don't know if they have that on the roster right now. Maybe Darian Kincade could be that, but we just haven't really seen it. Maybe Tyler Steen could be that if he's not the right guard, but either way, they need to add some depth there, and I'd be kind of shocked if they don't do that in the draft.
Dave, I know it's way too early, but what position battle are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, it is early. Right now, it's right guard because I think it could come down to Tyler Steen versus Kenyon Green, and I think Steen would have the upper hand there just because he's been here. They were prepared to go into the season last year with him at right guard until he got that ankle injury, and then Mekhi Becton gets put in there and he plays well and they don't move him. So I think he's the front runner, but Kenyon Green has not had a very good NFL career, but we've seen Jeff Stoutland do this with so many players. He just finds these players who are kind of down and out, and he makes them into something. And Kenyon Green has a lot of things to really like about him. There's a reason he was a first-round pick a few years ago. So right now, that's the battle that seems like a lot of fun. But then there are other ones, too. I mean, you look at cornerback, Keely Ringo versus Adoree Jackson. I mean, that could be a fun one, too. You have the veteran who's been in the league a long time versus, still a really young third-year player who was a fourth-round pick a few years ago who has, all the physical tools in the world. He's 6'2", 215, runs a 4.4. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. So I think there are a bunch of them to keep an eye on, but those are 3 that I'm looking forward to.
Well, Dave, interesting offseason so far. I'm sure the next month's going to be pretty interesting. Hopefully you get a little downtime and then as soon as you go on a vacation or something, all of a sudden they make a trade for a DM. But enjoy a little downtime.
That's the way it goes, Ty. I can't stop that.
soon as you step on the plane, you get off the plane. Oh, they just traded with the Bengals. They had a Hendrickson. Appreciate the time, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, it was Dave Zangaro on the Comcast Business Hotline. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want more of this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And you can do that kind of over here if you want more of the best show ever.